The morning sun cast long shadows across the steps of the federal courthouse in Washington, D.C. Hundreds of people gathered for the annual Civil Rights Memorial Ceremony. Judge Maria Washington stood among the crowd, her black robes replaced, with a simple blue dress for this solemn occasion. She had attended this ceremony every year for the past 15 years, honoring those who fought for justice and equality. The speakers talked about progress and hope, while families of civil rights heroes listened with tears in their eyes. Maria felt the weight of history in this place. As a federal judge, she understood how the law could be both a weapon against the innocent and a shield for the powerless. Today was about remembering both sides of that truth. Then the sky changed. Massive shadow fell across the courthouse steps. People looked up and gasped. Enormous ships hung in the air above them, each one the size of a city block. The ships were made of some kind of crystal that sparkled in the sunlight. They moved, without sound, hovering like giant glass mountains in the sky. Panic spread through the crowd. People screamed and ran in all directions. Parents grabbed their children and rushed toward the streets. Security guards spoke rapidly into their radios while pointing at the sky. Maria stood still, watching the ships with careful eyes. One of the smaller ships descended toward the courthouse steps. It was still huge, maybe the size of a football field. The ship landed with surprising gentleness, its crystal surface touching the ground without making a sound. The crowd that remained backed away, leaving a wide circle around the strange vessel. A door opened in the side of the ship. Steam or some kind of gas poured out, creating white clouds that drifted across the steps. Through the mist, figures began to emerge. They were tall, much taller than humans. Each one stood at least 8 feet high with 4 arms and skin that looked like living crystal. Their faces were angular and sharp with large eyes that glowed with inner light. The leader stepped forward. His crystal skin was pale blue and seemed to sparkle with each movement. He wore what looked like armor made from the same crystal material as their ships. When he spoke, his voice came from some kind of device that translated his words into English. "Primitive beings of this world," the alien said, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "I am Ambassador Veltar of the Zephyrian Empire. Your planet is now under our protection and control. You will surrender your weapons and submit to our authority." Most of the remaining crowd ran away at these words. Only a few dozen people stayed, including security guards, some reporters, and Maria. She watched the aliens carefully, noting how they moved and how they looked at the humans around them. The ambassador continued speaking. "We have studied your communications and determined that this location represents your primitive legal system. We will establish our command center here and begin the process of bringing order to your chaotic world." 2 more aliens stepped forward beside the ambassador. One was smaller with darker crystal skin and what looked like scientific equipment attached to his body. The other was larger and clearly a military officer based on the weapons he carried. Maria took a deep breath and walked toward the aliens. The security guards tried to stop her, but she waved them back. She had made a decision that would change everything. "Welcome to Earth," she said in a clear, strong voice. "I am Judge Maria Washington, a representative of our legal system. I would like to discuss the terms of your arrival." The aliens turned to look at her. The ambassador's large eyes studied her from head to toe. Then something unexpected happened. He began to laugh. It was a strange sound, like crystal chimes being struck by hammers. The other aliens joined in the laughter. The scientific officer made notes on a device while pointing at Maria. The military officer shook his head as if he could not believe what he was seeing. "This small creature claims to represent your legal system," the ambassador said to the other humans nearby. "Look at her. She is tiny and dark. In our empire, only the largest and most pale beings can hold positions of authority. This is clearly some kind of joke." Maria felt anger rise in her chest, but she kept her face calm. She had faced this kind of dismissal before in her own species. Some humans had looked at her and seen only her skin color or her gender, never bothering to learn about her mind or her achievements. Now aliens were doing the same thing. "I understand you may have different customs," Maria said politely, But on Earth, authority comes from knowledge and wisdom, not from size or color. I am a federal judge appointed by our highest leaders. I have the authority to speak for our legal system. The scientific officer, who seemed to be called Crixnall, pointed some kind of scanner at Maria. Lights flashed across her body as the device analyzed her. The creature appears to be a standard human female, he reported. Smaller than average, with high levels of melanin in her skin. No visible technology or enhancements. Clearly a lower-class specimen. The military officer, Captain Zoreth, stepped closer to Maria. His forearms flexed as he looked down at her. Ambassador, surely this is not the best their species can offer. Perhaps their real leaders are hiding and sent this one as a sacrifice. Ambassador Veltar waved one of his hands dismissively. It matters little. Whether this creature has authority or not, the result is the same. Your world belongs to the Zephyrian Empire now. We will establish our laws and our order. Your primitive legal system is irrelevant. Maria straightened her shoulders and looked directly into the ambassador's glowing eyes. With respect, Ambassador, I believe you may be making an error. Earth has its own laws regarding contact with other worlds. Perhaps we should discuss this properly before any final decisions are made. The aliens laughed again, even louder this time. The sound echoed off the courthouse walls. Several of them began speaking in their own language, clearly making jokes about Maria and the humans. But Maria did not back down. She had spent her entire career facing opponents who underestimated her. She had learned that being dismissed was sometimes an advantage. While her enemies laughed, she could prepare her real strategy. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a folder of documents. The aliens watched with amusement as she organized her papers. They had no idea what was coming next. Ambassador Veltar watched Maria shuffle through her papers with growing amusement. He turned to his companions and spoke in the Zephyrian language, his words causing both of them to make that strange chiming laughter sound. The translation device around his neck picked up his words and converted them to English for the humans to hear. Look at this tiny dark creature, he said, making sure the humans could understand. She believes her primitive papers have meaning. In our empire, legal authority requires proper breeding, adequate size, and the correct crystalline coloration. This being possesses none of these qualities. Crixnall pointed his scanner at Maria again, taking more detailed readings. Ambassador, her brain activity is surprisingly high for such a small specimen. However, her physical structure clearly marks her as a worker-class individual. Notice the high melanin content in her skin, which indicates a laborer background in most species we have encountered. Captain Zoreth flexed his four massive arms and looked down at Maria with obvious contempt. Perhaps their species evolved differently, he suggested. Maybe they allow their lowest classes to play at being leaders. It would explain their chaotic civilization and primitive technology. Maria continued organizing her documents, but she listened carefully to every word. The aliens were revealing important information about their culture and their assumptions. She had learned long ago that listening to how people talked about others often revealed more about them than anything they said directly. Ambassador Veltar activated a communication device on his wrist. Maria could see a holographic image appear above the device, showing the interior of one of the ships in orbit. Dozens of Zephyrian officers were visible on what appeared to be the bridge of their command vessel. Fellow officers, the ambassador announced, I am transmitting images of the local authorities we have encountered. Observe this amusing specimen who claims legal authority over their world. The holographic Zephyrians immediately began their chiming laughter when they saw Maria. One of them, who appeared to be a high-ranking officer based on the elaborate crystal formations on his uniform, spoke up. Ambassador Veltar, surely this is some form of primitive humor. No civilized species would grant authority to such an obviously inferior being. Her small stature and dark coloration clearly indicate a servant-class background. Another officer added, perhaps they are testing our intelligence by presenting us with an obvious decoy. Their real leaders must be hiding while they send this amusing creature to distract us. Maria felt the familiar burn of discrimination, but she had experienced this reaction many times in her own career. Early in her legal practice, Opposing lawyers had often dismissed her based on her appearance. Judges had sometimes seemed surprised when she demonstrated her knowledge of the law. Even some of her colleagues had initially assumed she was less qualified than her white male counterparts. But Maria had learned to use these assumptions against those who made them. When people expected less from her, they prepared less for her. Arguments. When they assumed she was inferior, they became careless in their own presentations. Over the years, she had won many cases simply because her opponents had underestimated her preparation and intelligence. "Ambassador," she said calmly, interrupting the alien conversation, "I appreciate that our species may appear different to you. However, I believe there may be some legal issues we should discuss before your empire makes any permanent decisions about Earth." Captain Zorith made a dismissive gesture with two of his arms. "What could a primitive species possibly know about galactic law? Your technology is barely capable of leaving your own atmosphere. You have no understanding of interstellar legal frameworks." "Actually," Maria replied, "Earth has been monitoring interstellar communications for several decades. We have some knowledge of galactic legal systems, including the Zephyrian Empire's legal code." This statement caused the aliens to pause their laughter. Ambassador Veltar's glowing eyes focused more intently on Maria. "Impossible," he said. "Your species lacks the technology to intercept our communications. Even if you could, you would not understand the complexity of our legal system." Crixnell adjusted his scanning device and took new readings of Maria. "Ambassador, her neural activity patterns are highly unusual. There appears to be significantly more cognitive processing occurring than we would expect from a being of her apparent class level." Maria opened her folder and pulled out a specific document. It was written in both English and what appeared to be alien text. The Zephyrians could see their own symbols printed on the human paper. "This is a formal request for legal arbitration under Section 47 Alpha of the Galactic Commerce Code," Maria announced. "According to the legal frameworks your empire has established, any species facing conquest has the right to request formal legal proceedings before military action can be taken." The aliens fell silent. Ambassador Veltar stared at the document in Maria's hands. Captain Zorith moved closer, his weapon systems making small humming sounds as they powered up. Crixnell frantically adjusted his scanners, trying to understand what he was seeing. "Where did you obtain that document?" Veltar demanded. "The Galactic Commerce Code is not available to primitive species. You could not possibly understand its contents or legal implications." Maria held the document steady in her hands. "I understand more than you might expect, Ambassador. For instance, I know that Section 47 Alpha requires you to prove legal standing before claiming authority over another species. I also know that once a formal request for arbitration is made, all military actions must cease until the legal proceedings are complete." The holographic officers in the ship above were no longer laughing. One of them, who appeared to be a legal advisor based on the scrolls and documents around his station, spoke with obvious concern in his voice. "Ambassador Veltar, if the humans have actually filed a proper arbitration request, we are bound by our own laws to honor it. The Galactic Commerce Code is sacred to our empire. Violating it would make us outcasts among all civilized species." Captain Zorith moved his hand toward his weapon. "Ambassador, we could simply eliminate this creature and claim she never made the request. Who would believe that such a primitive being understood our legal system?" But Ambassador Veltar raised one of his hands to stop the captain. "No, Zorith. Our conversation is being recorded by our own systems. The request has been made formally and properly. If we violate our own legal code, we lose all moral authority in the galaxy." Maria watched the aliens struggle with this new development. They had expected to find a primitive world with no understanding of galactic law. Instead, they had encountered someone who knew their legal system well enough to invoke their own protections against them. But this was just the beginning of Maria's strategy. She had much more knowledge to reveal, and the aliens had not yet realized how thoroughly they had underestimated both her and her species. Maria reached into her briefcase again and pulled out a second folder, this one marked with official seals and ribbons. The aliens watched with growing confusion as she opened it and removed a document written on heavy, formal paper. "Ambassador Veltar, she said in a clear voice. I should clarify my position. I am not simply a representative of Earth's legal system. I am Judge Maria Washington, Chief Justice of the Federal District Court for Interstellar Commerce. The aliens exchanged glances. Crixenel immediately began scanning the document with his devices, while Captain Zorath moved closer to examine the official seals. Ambassador Veltar's crystalline features showed signs of confusion. Interstellar commerce, Veltar repeated slowly. Your species does not engage in interstellar commerce. You barely have the technology to reach your own moon consistently. This title makes no sense. Maria smiled slightly. The court was established 30 years ago in preparation for exactly this situation. The United States Congress, working with other world governments, created this position after we began intercepting and studying galactic communications. We knew that first contact would eventually happen, and we wanted to be prepared. The holographic officers in the ship above were now speaking rapidly among themselves in their own language. Maria could not understand their words, but she could see their agitation growing. One of them, the legal advisor, was frantically consulting documents and databases. Crixenel finished scanning Maria's credentials and announced his findings. Ambassador, these documents are genuine. The human government did establish this legal position, and this individual has been formally appointed to it. The seals and signatures are authentic according to their governmental databases. Impossible, Captain Zorath growled. How could a primitive species prepare for galactic law without any knowledge of our legal systems? Maria opened her credentials folder wider, revealing additional documents written in several different alien scripts. The Zephyrians could see text in their own language, alongside symbols from other galactic civilizations. We have been monitoring galactic communications for 3 decades, Maria explained. Your legal proceedings are broadcast on subspace frequencies that our radio telescopes can detect. We have recorded thousands of hours of court sessions, trade negotiations, and diplomatic communications from dozens of different species. Ambassador Veltar stepped closer to examine the documents more carefully. His glowing eyes moved across the alien text, reading his own language written on human paper. These are actual quotes from our high court decisions, he said with amazement. Cases from 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Some of these precedents are obscure even to our own legal scholars. I have spent the last 30 years studying 17 different galactic legal systems, Maria continued. The Zephyrian Empire's legal code, the Altarian trade regulations, the Crystalline Federation's diplomatic protocols, and many others. Earth has been preparing for this day since before I graduated from law school. The legal advisor in the holographic display was now speaking urgently to Ambassador Veltar. Sir, I am reviewing our databases. Some of these human legal arguments reference cases that even I had forgotten about. She appears to know our legal system better than most of our own advocates. Maria pulled out another document, this one written entirely in Zephyrian script. She began to read aloud in the alien's own language, her pronunciation careful but accurate. The aliens listened in shock as this human woman recited complex legal concepts in their native tongue. According to the precedent set in the case of Empire versus the Methane Collective, year 847 of the current era, she read, any species claiming protectorate status over another must first demonstrate that the target species is incapable of self-governance and lacks sufficient legal frameworks to participate in galactic civilization. She paused and looked directly at Ambassador Veltar. Earth clearly has legal frameworks, as evidenced by our ability to invoke your own arbitration procedures. We also have knowledge of galactic law sufficient to participate in interstellar legal proceedings. Therefore, your claim of protectorate status is invalid under your own precedents. Captain Zorath's weapon systems began making louder humming sounds. Ambassador, this is clearly some form of trick or deception. We should end this charade and proceed with the conquest. But the legal advisor's voice from the ship was firm. Captain Zorath, the human is correct. The precedent she cited is valid and binding. If Earth possesses legal knowledge and functioning governmental systems, we cannot claim protectorate status without violating our own legal code. Ambassador Veltar studied Maria with new respect, but also with growing suspicion. Even if your species has monitored our communications, how could you possibly understand the deeper complexities of galactic law? These are concepts that require decades of specialized education to master. Maria closed her credentials folder and held it against her chest. Ambassador, I have been studying your legal system longer than many of your own lawyers. I earned my law degree from Harvard University, one of Earth's most prestigious legal institutions. I then spent 15 years as a practicing attorney before being appointed as a federal judge. For the last 30 years, I have devoted myself to understanding galactic law in preparation for this moment. She gestured toward the courthouse behind her. This building represents over 200 years of human legal tradition. We have developed concepts of justice, due process, and individual rights that complement and in some cases exceed the protections offered by galactic law. We are not a primitive species seeking protection. We are a civilization ready to take our place as equals in the galactic community. Crixnell was taking continuous readings with his scanner, his scientific curiosity clearly aroused. Ambassador, her cognitive patterns indicate extensive legal training and knowledge. The neural pathways associated with complex reasoning and legal analysis are highly developed. This individual possesses expertise comparable to our finest legal scholars. The holographic display showed increasing activity as more Zephyrian officers joined the conversation. Maria could see them consulting databases and legal references, trying to verify her claims and understand the implications of her knowledge. Ambassador Veltar was silent for several long moments, processing this new information. His assumptions about humanity had been completely wrong. Instead of finding a primitive species to conquer, he had encountered a civilization that had been preparing for this meeting for decades. You claim to know our legal system, he said, finally. But knowledge and understanding are different things. Even if you have memorized our laws, do you truly comprehend their application and interpretation? Maria opened her briefcase one more time and pulled out a thick folder marked with symbols from multiple alien civilizations. Ambassador, I have not just studied your laws. I have found inconsistencies, contradictions, and loopholes that your own legal system has never addressed. Would you like me to demonstrate? The silence that followed was profound. The aliens had come to Earth expecting easy conquest, but instead they had found an opponent who might know their own legal system better than they did. Maria opened the thick folder and removed a document that made Ambassador Veltar's crystalline features change color from pale blue to a deeper, more worried shade. The paper contained official seals from multiple galactic civilizations and was written in a combination of alien scripts. Ambassador Veltar, Maria announced formally, I hereby serve you with a formal cease and desist order under Section 47 Alpha of the Galactic Commerce Code, as well as Article 23 of the Interstellar Non-Aggression Treaty and subsection 15C of the Universal Rights Declaration. She extended the document toward the ambassador with steady hands. The alien leader stared at the paper as if it might explode. His three companions moved closer to examine the legal notice, their weapons, and scanning devices forgotten in their shock. Furthermore, Maria continued, under the legal precedents established by your own empire, specifically the rulings in Empire versus Silicate Confederation and Empire versus the Gas Giant Collectives, any military action taken against a species that has formally requested arbitration constitutes a violation of galactic law punishable by economic sanctions and diplomatic isolation. Captain Zorith stepped forward aggressively. These are just words on primitive paper. They have no meaning or authority over the Zephyrian Empire. Maria looked directly at the captain with calm determination. Captain, I suggest you consult with your legal advisors before making such statements. The Galactic Commerce Code is not optional for civilizations that wish to participate in interstellar trade and diplomacy. Your empire has signed and ratified these agreements. You are bound by them whether you like it or not. The legal advisor in the holographic display was frantically consulting his databases. His voice carried clear concern as he reported his findings. Ambassador, the human is correct. These are valid legal documents invoking legitimate protections under galactic law. If we proceed with military action now, We will be in violation of 17 different treaties and trade agreements. Crixnall scanned the cease and desist order with his most sophisticated equipment. Sir, the document is legally formatted according to galactic standards. All required seals and signatures are present and authentic. The legal references are accurate and properly cited. Ambassador Veltar took the document from Maria's hands, his forearms trembling slightly as he read through the complex legal language. Every citation was correct, every legal argument was sound, and every procedural requirement had been met perfectly. How is this possible? He whispered. These documents reference legal cases from across the galaxy, some involving civilizations we conquered decades ago. How could your species know about legal proceedings from before your world even had radio technology? Maria smiled with quiet confidence. Ambassador, when you broadcast legal proceedings across subspace, you never know who might be listening. Earth's radio telescopes have been recording your transmissions for much longer than you realize. We have archives of legal cases going back 50 years. She pulled out another document from her folder. I have also filed formal complaints against the Zephyrian Empire with the Galactic Legal Council, charging your government with 17 counts of illegal conquest, 43 counts of treaty violation, and over 200 counts of crimes against sentient beings. The holographic officers in the ship above erupted in panicked conversation. Maria could see them checking databases, consulting legal references, and making urgent communications to other ships in the fleet. Captain Zoreth moved his hand toward his weapon again. Ambassador, we could eliminate these humans and destroy all evidence of their legal challenges. Without witnesses, there would be no case against us. But the legal advisor's voice cut through the captain's suggestion with sharp authority. Captain Zoreth, that would constitute destruction of evidence and elimination of witnesses, both of which carry severe penalties under galactic law. Furthermore, our own recording systems have documented this entire encounter. The evidence cannot be destroyed without implicating ourselves. Maria watched the aliens struggle with the legal trap she had carefully constructed. Every option they considered led to greater legal complications. She had spent 3 decades studying not just their laws but their psychology and their cultural values. Ambassador, she said gently, I understand this situation is complicated. Your empire values legal authority and proper procedures. That is actually something Earth respects about Zephyrian civilization. We simply ask that you apply those same legal standards to your interactions with other species. Ambassador Veltar looked at the documents in his hands, then at Maria, then at his companions. You speak of legal cases involving species we have conquered. Are you suggesting that those conquests were illegal? I am stating it as a legal fact, Maria replied. The Silicate Confederation was conquered through fraudulent contract negotiations. The gas giant collectives were subjugated using forged trade agreements. The Methane Collective was annexed based on deliberately mistranslated treaty documents. I have evidence of all these violations. She pulled out a data storage device that looked remarkably similar to Zephyrian technology. This contains recordings of your legal proceedings, analysis of your conquest methods, and documented proof of systematic legal fraud, spanning 40 years of Zephyrian expansion. Crixnall's scanner began beeping rapidly as he examined the data. Device. Ambassador. This device contains terabytes of information organized according to galactic legal standards. The data appears to be authentic recordings from our own legal systems. The legal advisor's holographic image flickered as he processed this information. Sir, if the humans possess evidence of illegal conquests, and if they present this evidence to the Galactic Legal Council, the consequences for our empire would be catastrophic. We could face sanctions, reparations, and possible dissolution of our government. Maria stepped closer to Ambassador Veltar, her voice remaining calm and professional. I am prepared to present all of this evidence to the appropriate galactic authorities unless we can reach a different agreement. Earth is willing to negotiate, but only as equals, not as subjects. Captain Zoreth was growing more agitated. This is impossible. How could a primitive species accumulate such detailed legal knowledge? How could they understand our systems better than we do? Captain, Maria replied, that question reveals a fundamental misunderstanding about humanity. We are not primitive. We are prepared. For 30 years, we have been studying, learning, and preparing for this encounter. We knew that someday we would need to defend ourselves not with weapons, but with knowledge and legal expertise. Ambassador Veltar stared at the cease and desist order in his hands. Every legal argument was flawless. Every citation was accurate, and every procedural requirement had been met. The human had outmaneuvered him using his own empire's legal system. What exactly are you proposing? He asked quietly. Maria opened her briefcase one final time and pulled out a new document. I am proposing that we begin formal arbitration proceedings as equals. Earth will withdraw its complaints against the Zephyrian Empire's past actions in exchange for recognition of our sovereignty and our right to participate in galactic civilization as an independent world. The aliens fell silent as they realized they had walked into a carefully constructed legal trap. The small, dark human they had mocked was about to fundamentally change the balance of power in the galaxy. 30 years earlier, Dr. Robert Chen sat in a small room deep beneath the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico, staring at computer screens filled with strange signals. The radio telescope had been scanning the sky for signs of extraterrestrial intelligence for decades, but what Robert had discovered was beyond anything the scientists had expected to find. Director Murphy, Robert called to his supervisor. You need to see this immediately. Director Murphy rushed over to Robert's workstation and looked at the data scrolling across the monitors. The signals were clearly artificial, highly organized, and contained complex mathematical patterns that suggested advanced intelligence. This is not random communication, Robert explained excitedly. These signals have structure, grammar, and what appears to be legal formatting. I think we are listening to alien court proceedings. Director Murphy felt his heart racing as he realized the implications. Are you certain these are legal proceedings? The patterns match every legal document format I have ever studied, Robert replied. There are sections that appear to be opening: statements, witness testimony, cross-examinations, and final judgments. We are listening to aliens conducting trials and legal negotiations. Within hours, a secret meeting was organized in Washington, D.C. Government officials, scientists, linguists, and legal experts gathered in a secure conference room to discuss Robert's discovery. Among those present was a young attorney named Maria Washington, who had recently graduated from Harvard Law School and was working as a prosecutor in the Justice Department. Ladies and gentlemen, Director Murphy announced to the assembled group, we have confirmed that we are intercepting legal proceedings from multiple alien civilizations. These communications contain detailed information about interstellar law, trade agreements, and diplomatic protocols. Maria listened with fascination as the scientists explained their findings. The aliens were not just communicating randomly. They were conducting business, resolving disputes, and governing their civilizations according to complex legal systems. This presents us with an unprecedented opportunity, said General Patricia Hayes, the military representative at the meeting. If we can understand their legal systems, we might be able to protect Earth when they eventually discover us. Dr. Susan Clark, a linguistics expert from MIT, raised an important question. How long would it take to decode these communications and understand their legal frameworks? Based on the complexity of the signals, Robert answered, we estimate it could take 20 to 30 years to develop a comprehensive understanding of their legal systems. Maria raised her hand. If I may suggest, we should not just study their laws. We should prepare our own legal defenses. When first contact happens, we need to be ready to negotiate as equals, not as victims. The director of the CIA, William Davis, nodded in agreement. We propose creating a secret program to prepare Earth for legal contact with alien civilizations. We need our best legal minds working on this project immediately. Over the following months, a highly classified program was established called Project Legal Shield. Maria was recruited as one of the primary researchers, along with legal experts from around the world. Their mission was to study alien legal systems and develop Earth's legal defenses for eventual first contact. Maria spent the next 5 years learning to decode alien languages, while continuing her regular career as a prosecutor. Every evening after work, she would drive to a secret facility outside Washington where teams of linguists, lawyers, and scientists worked to understand the alien communications. "Maria," Dr. Clark said during one of their late-night sessions, "you have a natural talent for understanding these legal structures. The alien legal concepts seem to make sense to you in ways that other team members struggle with. I think it is because I understand what it feels like to be underestimated," Maria replied. "In my regular job, I often face opponents who assume I am less capable because of my race and gender. I have learned to use their assumptions against them. Maybe I can do the same thing with aliens." As the years passed, Maria advanced in her regular career while secretly becoming one of Earth's leading experts on galactic law. She was appointed as a federal judge at the young age of 35, while simultaneously leading the legal analysis of alien communications. The team discovered that the galaxy was dominated by several major civilizations, with the Zephyrian Empire being one of the most powerful. The Zephyrians had conquered dozens of worlds through legal manipulation rather than pure military force. They would arrive at primitive worlds, declare them protectorates, and then use complex legal arguments to justify their control. "The Zephyrians are brilliant legal strategists," Maria explained to her team. "They always make their conquests appear legitimate under galactic law. Other civilizations cannot object because technically the Zephyrians are following proper procedures." "Doctor," Clark looked up from her translation work. "So how do we defend against legal conquest?" "We beat them at their own game," Maria replied with determination. "We learn their legal system better than they know it themselves. We find the loopholes, the contradictions, and the weaknesses in their own laws." 15 years into the project, Maria was appointed to a new position that did not officially exist. Congress secretly authorized the creation of the Federal District Court for Interstellar Commerce, and Maria became its first and only Chief Justice. Her job was to prepare Earth's legal defenses for the day when alien contact would finally occur. "Maria," President Anderson said during a private meeting in the Oval Office, "you have become our planet's expert on alien law. When first contact happens, you will be our primary representative." "Mr. President," Maria replied, "I have spent 15 years preparing for this responsibility. When the aliens arrive, they will expect to find a primitive world with no understanding of galactic law. Instead, they will find a civilization that has been studying their legal systems for decades." The final 15 years of preparation were intense. Maria and her team identified weaknesses in Zephyrian legal arguments, documented evidence of their illegal conquests, and prepared comprehensive legal challenges to their expansion methods. When the Zephyrian ships finally appeared over Washington, D.C., Maria was ready. She had spent 30 years preparing for this exact moment. The aliens would expect to find a helpless world, but instead they would encounter a legal adversary who knew their own laws better than they did. As she walked toward the alien ambassador on the courthouse steps, Maria carried with her 3 decades of preparation, study, and determination. The moment that would define Earth's future had finally arrived, and humanity was ready to fight for its freedom in the courtrooms of the galaxy. Maria opened her final folder and spread 17 different documents across the courthouse steps. Each document was marked with the official seals of different alien civilizations, and each one contained evidence of Zephyrian legal violations. Ambassador Veltar stared at the papers with growing alarm as he recognized the symbols and signatures of worlds his empire had conquered. "Ambassador," Maria announced in a clear voice, "I am formally charging the Zephyrian Empire with systematic violations of galactic law spanning 4 decades of illegal expansion." She picked up the first document and began reading. "The conquest of the Silicate Confederation in galactic year 823 was accomplished through fraudulent trade negotiations. Your representatives deliberately mistranslated key contract terms, making it appear that the Silicates had agreed to become a protectorate when they had actually agreed only to a limited mining partnership." Captain Zoreth stepped forward aggressively. "Those are lies. The Silicate Confederation chose to join our empire voluntarily." Maria held up a data recording device. "I have the original negotiations recorded in both languages. Your translators, changed the word partnership to submission, and the phrase temporary mining rights to permanent territorial control. The silicates never agreed to become your subjects. The legal advisor in the holographic display was frantically checking his records. Ambassador, she appears to have recordings of classified negotiations from 30 years ago. How is this possible? Maria picked up the second document. The gas giant collectives were conquered through forged documentation. Your empire created fake historical records claiming ancient territorial rights to their star system. The real, historical records, which I have obtained from neutral archives, show that Zephyrian ships had never visited that system before your invasion. Crixnall's scanner was working overtime as he tried to verify Maria's claims. Sir, her data devices contain terabytes of historical records from multiple galactic archives. The information appears to be authentic. The Methane Collective, Maria continued, holding up a third document, was annexed through deliberate treaty violations. Your empire agreed to protect their homeworld in exchange for mining rights to their outer planets. 6 months later, you claimed they had violated the treaty and seized their entire system. The alleged violations were actually normal industrial activities that your own surveys had approved. Ambassador Veltar's crystalline skin was now showing deep purple stress patterns. Even if these accusations were true, which they are not, what authority do you have to bring charges against a galactic empire? Maria smiled and pulled out a communication device of her own. I am glad you asked, Ambassador. I have been in contact with the Galactic Legal Council since your ships appeared in our solar system. She activated the device, and a holographic image appeared showing a council chamber filled with representatives from dozens of different alien species. At the center of the chamber sat a massive being with tentacles and glowing eyes who appeared to be the council's chief arbitrator. Greetings, Ambassador Veltar, the chief arbitrator said in a voice that sounded like deep ocean currents. I am Chief Arbitrator Thulon of the Galactic Legal Council. We have been monitoring your conversation with the human representative. Ambassador, Veltar's stress patterns intensified. Chief Arbitrator, I was not aware that the Legal Council was observing these proceedings. The human contacted us 3 hours ago, Chief Arbitrator Thulon explained. She presented preliminary evidence of systematic legal violations by the Zephyrian Empire. We are now conducting a formal investigation. Maria gestured toward her documents. I am transmitting the complete evidence files to the Legal Council now. 17 conquered worlds, 43 treaty violations, and over 200 documented crimes against sentient beings. A new voice joined the holographic display. It belonged to a graceful being with wing-like appendages who identified herself as Advocate Silith representing the conquered worlds. Chief Arbitrator, we have been waiting decades for someone to challenge Zephyrian legal practices. The human's evidence confirms what we have long suspected. Captain Zorith was becoming increasingly agitated. This is clearly a conspiracy against the Zephyrian Empire. How could a primitive species coordinate with the Galactic Legal Council? Chief Arbitrator Thulon's tentacles moved in what appeared to be amusement. Captain, there is nothing primitive about the human legal analysis. Judge Washington's understanding of galactic law is more comprehensive than most professional advocates. We are considering offering her a position on the legal council itself. Ambassador Veltar realized that his situation was rapidly becoming impossible. Chief Arbitrator, surely any irregularities in past conquests can be resolved through normal, diplomatic channels. I am afraid not, Ambassador, Maria interjected. The evidence shows a clear pattern of deliberate fraud spanning 4 decades. This is not a matter of diplomatic disagreement. These are criminal charges under galactic law. She picked up another document and held it toward the holographic display. I am also filing a formal request for reparations to be paid to all illegally conquered worlds. Based on standard galactic compensation formulas, the total amount would be approximately 12 trillion galactic credits. The Zephyrian officers in the ship above were now in full panic mode. Maria could see them frantically calculating numbers and consulting financial databases. The amount she had mentioned represented a significant portion of their empire's total wealth. Crixnall stepped closer to Maria, his scanner beeping rapidly. Ambassador, her financial calculations appear to be accurate. The reparations formula she is using is the standard one established by the Legal Counsel for cases of illegal conquest. Furthermore, Maria continued, I am requesting that all conquered worlds be granted immediate independence, and that the Zephyrian Empire be placed under legal supervision until they can demonstrate compliance with galactic law. Chief Arbitrator, Thulon's image nodded approvingly. The Legal Council will consider all of these requests. Ambassador Veltar, you and your fleet are hereby ordered to withdraw from Earth space immediately and report to the Legal Council for formal proceedings. Ambassador Veltar looked around desperately. His military advantage had become meaningless. His legal authority had been completely undermined. The small human woman he had mocked was systematically destroying his empire's reputation and possibly its existence. Chief Arbitrator, he said with obvious desperation, surely we can negotiate some kind of settlement that avoids formal legal proceedings. Maria stepped forward confidently. I am open to negotiations, Ambassador, but they will be conducted as equals, with Earth represented as a sovereign world and full member of the galactic community. The alien who had come to conquer Earth was now begging to negotiate with the judge he had initially dismissed as primitive and insignificant. The balance of power had shifted completely, and Maria was just getting started. Maria activated another communication device, and suddenly the courthouse steps were filled with holographic images of humans from around the world. Legal experts from every continent appeared as translucent figures standing alongside Maria, creating an impressive display of Earth's legal diversity. Ambassador Veltar, Maria announced, I would like you to meet Earth's true legal team. A distinguished elderly man with white hair stepped forward from the holographic group. I am Professor James Oxford from the University of Cambridge. I have spent the last 20 years studying Altarian trade law and its applications to interstellar commerce. A woman in traditional Japanese robes bowed respectfully. I am Judge Yuki Tanaka from the International Court of Justice in Tokyo. My specialty is the legal frameworks of the Crystalline Federation and their approach to diplomatic immunity. One by one, the holographic figures introduced themselves. There was Dr. Ahmed Hassan from Cairo, an expert in methane collective environmental law. Professor Elena Rodriguez from Mexico City had studied the legal systems of gas giant civilizations. Dr. Liu Wei from Beijing specialized in the complex contract laws used by silicon-based life forms. Ambassador Veltar watched in growing amazement, as more than 50 human legal experts presented their credentials. Each one had spent decades studying different aspects of galactic law. Together, they represented a comprehensive understanding of interstellar legal systems that no single species had ever assembled. This is impossible, Crixnall whispered, his scanner working frantically to process the data from all the human experts. How could one species develop such diverse legal expertise? Professor Oxford stepped forward to answer. Crixnall, what you are seeing is humanity's greatest strength. We are not a monolithic civilization like the Zephyrian Empire. We have thousands of different cultures, legal traditions, and ways of thinking about justice. Judge Tanaka nodded in agreement. When we began studying galactic law, we approached it from hundreds of different perspectives simultaneously. Each human culture brought its own understanding of justice and legal reasoning to the analysis. Dr. Hassan picked up the explanation. The Zephyrian Empire has one legal tradition, one way of thinking about law, one approach to justice. Humanity has thousands. When we combined all of our different perspectives, we were able to understand galactic legal systems in ways that no single culture species ever could. Maria gestured toward her colleagues. Ambassador, your empire makes legal decisions based on size, color, and physical appearance. You assume that beings who look different from you must think differently as well. But diversity of appearance often leads to diversity of thought, and diversity of thought leads to better legal analysis. Chief Arbitrator Thulon's holographic image showed obvious fascination. Judge Washington, this is remarkable. The Legal Council has never encountered a species with such comprehensive understanding of multiple legal systems. Captain Zorith was becoming increasingly frustrated. This proves nothing. Numbers do not matter in legal proceedings. Only the strength of the arguments matters. Dr. Rodriguez stepped forward with a smile. Captain, you are absolutely correct. Let me demonstrate the strength of our arguments. She activated a data display that showed complex legal charts and case analyses. I have identified 47 internal contradictions within Zephyrian legal code itself. Your own laws contradict each other in ways that make many of your conquests illegal, even under your own standards. Professor Liu Wei joined the presentation. I have analyzed 17 different interpretations of the same galactic commerce regulations. The Zephyrian Empire has been using the most restrictive interpretation when dealing with other species, while applying the most lenient interpretation to their own actions. Dr. Hassan pointed to specific sections of the legal code. Your environmental protection laws require consent from native species before industrial development can begin. However, your conquest protocols allow you to override that consent through protectorate status. These two legal frameworks are fundamentally incompatible. Ambassador Veltar stared at the human legal analysis with growing horror. His own legal experts were frantically checking the citations and finding them all accurate. The humans had found flaws in Zephyrian law that the Empire's own lawyers had never noticed. How did you identify these contradictions? The legal advisor from the ship asked weakly. Judge Tanaka answered calmly. Because we approached your legal system from multiple cultural perspectives. In Japanese legal tradition, we emphasize harmony and internal consistency. When we applied those principles to Zephyrian law, the contradictions became obvious. Professor Oxford added, British legal tradition focuses on precedent and logical progression. When we traced the historical development of your legal code, we found places where new laws had been added without considering their impact on existing regulations. Dr. Hassan continued, Islamic legal tradition emphasizes justice and protection of the innocent. When we analyzed your conquest procedures from that perspective, we found numerous violations of your own stated principles of fairness. Maria stepped forward to address Ambassador Veltar directly. This is why humanity is ready to join the galactic community as equals, not subjects. We bring a diversity of legal thought that can help resolve contradictions and improve justice for all species. Chief Arbitrator Thulan's tentacles moved in what was clearly excitement. Judge Washington, the legal council would be honored to have humanity join us as full members. Your species' approach to legal analysis could revolutionize galactic jurisprudence. Crixnall's scanner was now beeping continuously as he tried to process all the legal data being presented. Ambassador, the humans have identified legal frameworks that we never knew existed. Their analysis is more sophisticated than anything in our databases. Captain, Zorith made one final attempt to salvage the situation. Even if their legal arguments are sound, they still lack the military power to enforce their demands. Maria smiled and activated one more communication device. The holographic image that appeared showed the bridge of a massive spacecraft, but this one was clearly of human construction. Standing on the bridge was Admiral Patricia Hayes wearing the uniform of the United Earth Space Command. Captain Zorith, Admiral Hayes said calmly, you are correct that military power matters. You should know that Earth's defense fleet has been tracking your ships since they entered our solar system. We have been preparing for this encounter for 30 years, and that preparation included military as well as legal defenses. Ambassador Veltar's stress patterns reached maximum intensity as he realized that humanity had been preparing for first contact on every possible level. They had not just studied galactic law, they had built the technology and military capacity to defend themselves if legal arguments failed. Admiral, Ambassador Veltar said quietly, how many ships do you have? Enough, Admiral Hayes replied simply. But more importantly, we have something your empire has forgotten. We have justice, diversity, and the determination to fight for our freedom using every tool available to us. Maria looked around at all the assembled humans, both physical and holographic, then turned back to Ambassador Veltar. Ambassador, humanity offers the Zephyrian Empire a choice. You can continue your illegal expansion and face the consequences from the Galactic Legal Council, or you can join us in creating a new approach to interstellar relations based on equality, justice, and mutual respect. The aliens stood in stunned silence, completely outmaneuvered by the species they had assumed was primitive and helpless. Ambassador Veltar stood motionless for several long minutes, his crystalline features cycling through different colors as he processed the impossible situation he faced. His empire's legal foundation was crumbling. His military advantage was neutralized, and the species he had come to conquer was offering him a path to redemption that his own pride made difficult to accept. Finally, he spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. "Judge Washington, I formally withdraw the Zephyrian Empire's claim to protectorate status over Earth." A collective sigh of relief echoed from the human legal team, but Maria remained focused. She had spent 30 years preparing for this moment, and she knew that withdrawal was only the first step toward real justice. "Ambassador, I appreciate your decision to respect Earth's sovereignty," Maria replied. "However, the charges against your empire for illegal conquests of other worlds remain active. The Galactic Legal Council still requires a response to those accusations." Chief Arbitrator Thulan's holographic image moved closer to the conversation. "Judge Washington is correct. The evidence she has presented requires formal legal proceedings regardless of the status of Earth." Ambassador Veltar's legal advisor spoke urgently from the ship above. "Sir, based on the evidence the humans have compiled, our empire faces potential dissolution if these charges are proven in court. The reparations alone could bankrupt our government." Captain Zorith stepped forward one last time. "Ambassador, we could still use military force to silence these accusations." But Ambassador Veltar raised all four of his arms in a gesture of complete surrender. "No, Captain. If we use violence to suppress legal challenges, we prove that every accusation against us is true. We cannot maintain moral authority through immoral actions." Maria opened her briefcase and pulled out one final document. "Ambassador, I have a proposal that might serve everyone's interests." She handed the document to Veltar, who read it carefully. As he reviewed the terms, his stress patterns began to fade and his coloration returned to a more normal pale blue. "You are proposing that the Zephyrian Empire voluntarily release all conquered worlds in exchange for reduced reparations and a structured rehabilitation program." "Exactly," Maria confirmed. "Earth is willing to serve as a mediator in this process. We will help your empire transition from conquest-based expansion to voluntary alliance building. The 17 worlds you have conquered illegally will be granted immediate independence, but we will also help negotiate new partnerships based on mutual benefit rather than domination." Professor Oxford stepped forward from the holographic legal team. "Ambassador, this approach allows your empire to maintain its technological and cultural achievements while abandoning the illegal practices that have made you enemies throughout the galaxy." Judge Tanaka added, "The transition process will be supervised by the Galactic Legal Council, with human legal experts serving as advisors to ensure all parties are treated fairly." Crixnell scanned the proposal document and announced his findings. "Ambassador, the human proposal is mathematically sound. The reduced reparations would be manageable, and the voluntary alliance model could actually increase our empire's long-term prosperity." Chief Arbitrator Thulan's tentacles moved in obvious approval. "This proposal demonstrates the kind of creative legal thinking that the galaxy needs. Judge Washington, the Legal Council formally invites humanity to join us as a full-member civilization." Admiral Hayes's image smiled with satisfaction. "Ambassador Veltar, if you accept this proposal, Earth's defense fleet will provide security assistance during the transition period. We have no interest in becoming conquerors ourselves, but we will help protect newly independent worlds from other potential threats." Ambassador Veltar looked around at all the assembled humans, then at his own officers, then at the Legal Council representatives. The choice was clear. Accept the human proposal and preserve his empire through transformation, or face legal destruction and possible military conflict with a species that had proven to be far more formidable than anyone had imagined. "I accept the proposal," he announced formally. "The Zephyrian Empire agrees to the voluntary release of all conquered worlds and the establishment of a rehabilitation program under human and legal council supervision." The courthouse steps erupted in cheers from the few dozen humans who had remained to witness the historic moment. Maria felt a wave of satisfaction wash over her, as 30 years of preparation finally achieved their intended result. 6 months later, Maria stood before the United Nations General Assembly in New York, wearing the new uniform of Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Legal Council. Behind her, a massive display showed the current status of the 17 worlds that had been liberated from Zephyrian control. Fellow citizens of Earth, she announced to the assembled delegates and the global television audience, I am pleased to report that the transition process is proceeding successfully. All 17 formerly conquered worlds have established independent governments, and 12 of them have chosen to form voluntary partnerships with the reformed Zephyrian Empire. Secretary General Maria Santos stepped forward to address the Assembly. Ambassador Washington, how has Earth's role in galactic politics evolved since first contact? Maria smiled as she considered the remarkable changes of the past 6 months. Secretary General, Earth has been recognized as a major legal authority in the galaxy. We now serve as mediators in interstellar disputes, advisors on legal reform, and advocates for the rights of smaller civilizations. She gestured toward the display behind her. More importantly, we have proven that justice and diversity are not weaknesses to be overcome, but strengths to be celebrated. The galaxy is a better place when all species are treated with dignity and respect. Ambassador Veltar's holographic image appeared beside Maria. Over the past months, he had become an unlikely ally in the process of reforming interstellar relations. Ambassador Washington speaks truthfully, he said in his translated voice. The Zephyrian Empire has learned that voluntary cooperation produces better results than forced submission. We are grateful for humanity's guidance in this transformation. Maria turned to address the camera directly, speaking to the billions of humans watching around the world. 6 months ago, aliens arrived at Earth expecting to find a primitive species ready for conquest. Instead, they found a civilization that had spent 30 years preparing for exactly that encounter. She paused, thinking about her own journey, from a young law student to humanity's representative in galactic affairs. They initially dismissed me because of my appearance, just as some humans have dismissed others based on race, gender, or background. But they learned the same lesson that we must all remember. True strength comes from knowledge, preparation, and an unwavering commitment to justice. The camera pulled back to show the entire assembly hall, where delegates from every nation on Earth were applauding. Above them, holographic images of representatives from dozens of alien civilizations joined in the celebration. The galaxy laughed at the human species when we first made contact, Maria concluded. They assumed we were too primitive to understand their sophisticated legal systems. But they discovered something that we have always known. Underestimating others based on appearances is the greatest mistake anyone can make. She looked directly into the camera with the same calm confidence she had shown on the courthouse steps 6 months earlier. Earth's message to the galaxy is simple. Justice is not determined by size, color, or species. Justice is determined by the strength of one's arguments, the depth of one's preparation, and the courage to stand up for what is right. As the assembly erupted in sustained applause, Maria thought about all the legal scholars, linguists, and scientists who had made this moment possible. The small team that had started decoding alien communications 30 years earlier had grown into a global network of experts who had fundamentally changed humanity's place in the universe. The species that had come to conquer Earth was now seeking Earth's guidance on how to build a more just galaxy. The judge they had mocked was now one of the most respected legal authorities in interstellar space, and the world they had dismissed as primitive was now leading the effort to create a new era of cooperation and equality among the stars. Justice had prevailed not through violence or superior technology, but through careful preparation, diverse thinking, and an unwavering commitment to the rule of law. Earth had taken its place among the stars not as conquerors, but as champions of justice for all sentient beings.